Hey, this is Justin Sane of Anti-Flag, and you're listening to Capsule Podcast on liveandlimbo.com. Peace.
You're listening to Capsule on liveandlimbo.com. My name is Sean Chen, and this is an adventure into music, film, and pop culture. Anti-Flag are an American punk rock band from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The four-piece group have created music throughout the last decade that have revolved around anti-war activism, human rights, income classes, and so much more. Today, I am so thrilled to be joined by Anti-Flag lead singer Justin Sane. Thanks for talking to me. How's it going?
Hey, hi. How you doing, man?
I'm good. So, I personally consider you guys bona fide veterans of the punk rock scene, and with a catalog of what I think is very impressive and broad and vast. I think you have like 10 albums in total. But when you are able to look back to like the 90s and see the music scene progress more through the decade, do you think we as a musical society are going on the right path?
I think that music, especially political music, it comes and goes in waves. I mean, when you even punk rock comes and goes in waves in terms of popularity. And I think during the George Bush years, we were in a cycle where injustice was just so obvious and rampant that people couldn't but help write about the issues that were taking place at that time. And I think when Bush left office, there was a lot of burnout for people on politics in general, including political music. And but slowly but surely, I think that now after people caught their breath for a little bit, they sort of gave Obama a little bit of a chance, and they're realizing that there hasn't been a lot of change. Certainly, where's the hope? Where's the change that Obama promised? That being the case, we're starting to see more of a rise in political music. Anti-Flag, to be honest with you, we went into the Obama era very pessimistically. We had very low expectations for President Obama, and he really lived up to them. We never stopped making political music, but I understand where there was some burnout for some people.
Do you think he gave it a good shot, though, Obama?
Well, no. I mean, I think that, when you look at our record, we have a 26-page booklet that comes with our record, and each song has an essay, and the essays in our mind are meant to either show people where our inspiration came from, or explain to people what our point of view was. And the essay for the very first song is by Dr. Cornel West, and it's an essay. It's an excerpt from an essay that he wrote called "Dr. King Weeps from His Grave," and he really outlines very eloquently the fact that Barack Obama's legacy has fallen very short of Dr. King's kind of vision. And, instead of fighting for workers' rights and homeowners, President Obama has really worked to bail out banks and give gifts to corporate America. He has deported more people than any president in the history of the United States. Mm-hmm. He has ramped up the George Bush policy of using drone strikes, which are in violation of international law, which makes him a war criminal. He has overseen a program of spying on U.S. citizens and, furthermore, attacking whistleblowers. And the people who exposed Richard Nixon and the corruption in his administration say that Barack Obama has been much worse on civil liberties and whistleblowers than Richard Nixon. So that's saying a lot. Yeah, President Obama has been good on gay rights, and I applaud him in that area. I think he has done some things that have been positive, certainly trying to expand health care to people. But when you look at his record, it's a record that is married to Wall Street and corporate America. He has not been fighting for the average American. And so I think he's an extreme disappointment.
Okay. Well, that's good that you went on a lot of those topics. I want to actually get into each one like individually. But so from your new album, American Spring, you have a great new track called Fabled World. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite lines from it has to do with Dr. King. It says, if Dr. King were here today, he'd fight for much more than a dream. So my question is, if Dr. Martin Luther King were still alive today, what do you think he'd be standing up for?
Well, more than anything, I think he would be standing up for the poor as a whole, black and white, and he would be fighting for workers' rights. When Dr. King was assassinated, his story, his legacy has been kind of repackaged as this, and he's held up as this great civil rights hero that everyone embraced and loved. But the reality is that most people had turned on Dr. King before he was assassinated. He was an early outspoken what's the word I'm searching for here? He was a critic.
Okay, yeah.
He was an early critic of the Vietnam War. He believed that you had poor people on both sides fighting and killing each other, and that those poor people had much more in common with each other than they did with the politicians who were sending them out to fight and kill each other. So he was fighting for poor people, and who he saw as being exploited. When he was assassinated in Nashville, he was assassinated because he was standing up for workers' rights. His I Have a Dream speech was basically distant. It was like a distant memory. I believe that right now, in a time where we have banks that have made record profits and hedge fund managers and Wall Street brokers who have taken record gains away from the average people, I think that Dr. King would be standing with those people and fighting for those people, and that's where I think President Obama has fallen short when you try to compare him to someone such as Dr. Martin Luther King.
And so, unfortunately, that he was killed. But I guess my question next is: do you think what do you think he would be saying to us now? Like he's not here, but what do you think he'd be thinking about? Like what have we done with his movement? Did we go into a right direction, or are we on the wrong path?
Well, obviously, we've seen that African Americans in America still are suffering from great human rights abuses and civil rights abuses. So obviously, he would feel as if that was an area which we needed to address. Mm-hmm. The poverty level of African Americans in places such as Baltimore, which we recently saw an uprising in, the poverty levels are still the same as they were on the day Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated, at least for African Americans. So I think that he would feel that was an area that we would need to address, and certainly the rampant issue of people, poor people in this society. I think that Dr. King would have a real problem with the fact that we allow there to be billionaires at the same time we have homeless people and people without health care and people without food. For me personally, I feel that, to me, that says our society has really lost its moral compass, and that we're headed in absolutely the wrong direction. And of course, Dr. King did not believe it was Christ-like to be dropping bombs and waging wars overseas, primarily killing poor people so that a very few rich elite could profit. And that's what we see today. We have a wealth gap that is the greatest since the Great Depression. It's growing between rich and poor. We basically live in a capitalist oligarchy where the average person's voice in politics is completely overshadowed and ignored at the behest of a few very wealthy people who are able to use the political process to gain for themselves at the expense of everyone else.
Who are some, I guess, rising leaders, whether it be political or influential, that are making an impact and going in the right direction for the African Americans?
Well, I think that what was really exciting about, and one of the reasons we named our new record the American Spring is, we're hearkening back to we're making reference to the Arab Spring. And what the Arab Spring did that was really exciting in my eyes is it showed how young people are able to mobilize and inspire one another to organize and take action. And they were able to do this in a way that was very decentralized. I think that the Occupy movement has the same idea, what Noam Chomsky would refer to as a decentralization of power, where communities are able to make choices for themselves, and they're able to work through consensus. They're able to work through direct democracy. So we can do away with this idea where we have these representatives that we supposedly elect, and then they're corrupted by corporations or special interest groups. And instead of representing us, they represent these corporations and special interest groups. We could do away with them and actually just have everyone involved in the political process, and that people can make decisions for themselves. So those are areas that I find inspiring. I mean, certainly all of that said, there are people in each community. I mean, you meet them all over that are trying to make a difference right within their community. And I would refer back to what the Occupy movement did with this idea of consensus building to make decisions. I think that is a direction in which we're going to see a lot more people taking, a lot more communities taking, because people are starting to realize that this kind of capitalist oligarchy or corporatocracy or whatever you want to call it, it's not working for people. It's only working for a few, and people are fed up. They can't feed their families. They can't afford health care. They can't keep a roof over their heads. More and more people are feeling desperate and frustrated. Again, kind of hearkening back to the idea of our title, The American Spring, when I look at uprisings such as in Baltimore or the Arab Spring, I think that these are they're a symbol of what's to come. The fact that more and more people are frustrated and realizing what we have is not working. And, with something like the Arab Spring, what we had was an uprising in an area that was geographically, it was considered to be impossible to have an uprising in. Because people considered the regimes to be too totalitarian, too oppressive. And yet people made that happen. And I think that that's ultimately we didn't have the result maybe that we wanted, but there's two things to think about there. The first is that the fact that it happened in an area where it should have never happened says to me that there's hope for change everywhere.
Absolutely.
No matter where we are. And then secondly, the idea that, well, gosh, I mean, I'm thinking about so many ideas.
I know, yeah, but it's good. It's good to be thinking about it.
Sure, for sure. But, hearkening on to the idea, though, that change is a possibility in any place. And the fact that change takes a long time to happen, right? Like great change, it can take decades. And when you look at the American Civil Rights Movement, it took decades just for African Americans to be able to not have to sit in the back of the bus, or to drink from the same water fountains as white people, or to eat in the same restaurants as white people. And we see that struggle, it's made a lot of great gains, but still up to this very day, they're still fighting for equality in the civil rights movement.
So I guess let's see, how do I phrase this? But okay, if you had, in a generalized way, if as simple as you could do it, what would be an ideal government rule for the U.S.? Like, what would make things better? Like, let's say, like 5 top overarching things.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I don't have all the answers. I don't know exactly what that would look like. But I believe that it's important to start that discussion.
Okay.
And that's what we try to do at the Record. And, I do believe in some of the topics, the ideas that we've already talked about, this idea of decentralization of power, letting communities make decisions for themselves, employing consensus decision making, employing direct democracy. I think that those are ideas that would take it in the direction that I could see it going, and it's amazing that we wouldn't have Ferguson. We wouldn't have, well, okay, I guess we would have Ferguson, but Ferguson happened. But for example, Baltimore, we wouldn't have if it wasn't for the use of like this new rise of technology, right? Where people have been able to utilize cell phones. All of a sudden, everybody's cell phone, they're able to communicate and organize. They're able to take video so that we can see what's happening. As soon as anybody sees something happening at the police, boom, their video cameras are out. And the Arab Spring was very similar. I mean, you couldn't have had the kind of organization they had if it hadn't been for this rise in technology. So what I do believe, and what we're trying to make reference to with this record is the fact that the rise of technology allows things like consensus decision making and direct democracy to become a reality, in the same way that the use of cell phones to videotape abuses by the police is a reality.
Yeah.
So I find that really exciting, and I think that that's something that we can incorporate into our future as far as making decisions for communities goes moving forward.
Now, I think I would consider myself pretty tech savvy. I have a phone, laptop, iPad, Apple Watch, all that good stuff, and all the youth are having that stuff as well. And so this leads into the next topic of stuff like the NSA and Snowden. So with all this technology, there are many great pros to it, like instant news, but there's also a lot of negativity that goes along with it as well. What are your thoughts on like the spying, topics like spying and such like that?
Well, yeah, of course, and I was touching on Snowden and some others when I was talking about President Obama going after whistleblowers. That said, this technology can be used for good and it can be used for evil. I mean, and it's going to be up to us to make those decisions as a society and as a whole, which means that people are going to have to be involved. And I think that for people to be involved, it's important to have a decentralization of power, because right now, so many people's voices are just shut out. Unless you're a millionaire, unless you're a billionaire, it's very hard to have an influence on government and policy making. And, the more we have one massive body of corporations that control our phone lines, or the pathways that the internet travels over, the more dangerous it is. I think it's important for us to decentralize that kind of power, and in general, it's important for us to decentralize power so that people can make decisions for their own communities. And obviously, a big part of what comes with that is transparency. And transparency is very important.
What would you consider Edward Snowden a hero or a traitor to the U.S.?
Oh, I certainly consider him a hero. I consider him a whistleblower. I think he should actually be protected by the government. Instead, he's being persecuted by people who broke the law. I mean, it's amazing that there's this great amount of power that is held by certain individuals and certain organizations within the government who have actually broken our laws, and but because they're so powerful, they're actually prosecuting someone who should be protected under our law.
So, what are your thoughts on decentralized money and currency like Bitcoin, for example?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think the more we can do it, the better. We want to take the monopoly of currency out of the hands of these giant banks, and that's where they hold a lot of power over us. And I think Bitcoin's really exciting. I think it's and I think that people can do this in their local economies, and that's what's so exciting. And there are local economies where people are doing this. They have a local currency, and they're working within that, and that it allows for so many things. It allows for bartering. Do you have a skill?
Exactly.
Are you a good carpenter? Well, I'm good at technology. I'll help you set up, some kind of Wi-Fi system at your home if you can come build this cabinet for me. I mean, there's so many areas where local economies could be established where people can help each other. And I think the more that we get away from these massive banks and these massive institutions, the better.
And so the American Spring drops on May 26th. Congrats.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. And what makes this new album different from your previous ones?
Oh, wow. It's a great question. It's a big question, but it's a good one. Well, so many things. I mean, it's what we consider to be our 10th record. It's it's a record where we're taking all of the experience and skill and knowledge that we've acquired over the years, and we focused really hard on putting it all into this record. We haven't made a record in the way that we made this record in a long time, where with this record we really the last two records we made, I think that we'd gone through the process of being on a big label. We'd felt a lot of pressure as far as feeling like the stakes socially and politically and globally were really high, with making these records within the build-up and during the course of the Gulf War, or the Iraq War. I think when George Bush left office and there was, we kind of took a collective sigh as a band, and we went back to doing things in more of a traditional DIY punk way in which we'd started. And we recorded our last two records in our own studio at home. The creative process was just very different, where we just kind of show up at the studio and kick around some riffs or some ideas and write songs, and we didn't really suss them through in the kind of intense way that we could have. We kind of just said, hey, this is a really cool song, let's track it and be done, and that's how we did it. And that was really great. I think that we needed that, and I'm really proud of both those records. I think they're both great punk rock records, but I guess what I'm getting at is I don't think that we pushed ourselves creatively. I think we got to a comfort zone and we felt good there, and it was a nice place to be where we hadn't been in a long time. And so for this record, we decided, look, this is a special anniversary for us. There's a lot going on in the world that we're passionate about. Let's not just make another record like we just made the last two records. That was cool. But now let's try something new. So we really pushed ourselves creatively, and we got out of Pittsburgh. We went to LA. We wrote songs in this horrible little hot room, and where we spent all day, and all we thought about was the record. And that is a really exciting process to go through, because when you're home, I mean, there are things that you have to deal with. You have to take out the garbage. Your mom calls and needs something. You go do it. There's just, when you leave town, you leave all of those things behind. And we had a friend who, Kenny Carkeet, he's in the band AWOL Nation, and he is younger than us, and he is a really creative force, and he's really really smart, and he grew up listening to Anti-Flag. He understood Anti-Flag sonically and ideologically, and he was dying to make this record. You know, he was like, "Let me make this record with you." He really wanted to produce it, so Kenny came to Pittsburgh, and we worked on songs. You know, we showed him what we had, and because Kenny, I think, in a ways for himself, he's always pushing the boundaries of what music can be, and he did the same thing with us. You know, he helped us get out of the place where we felt comfortable and pushed us to the limits of what Anti-Flag could be, but while keeping it Anti-Flag. And you know, I think that he had a really great filter for what that where that line was. You know, and you know, he really helped us to feel uncomfortable, but in the end, as a result of that, to create something exciting.
Always hungry. Yes, that's good.
Yeah. So those are, you know, a lot of ways in which I think that this record is different. And there, of course, in the lyrics, there's a lot of personal in the lyrics. I think we found a way to be political, but also find a way to make that political personal, and I think that that's important.
Absolutely. So after all of these years of touring and making music, you're a little bit older and a lot wiser now. What are some things that you've learned personally, like in your routine, in your day, that make your day worth living and like in a joyful way?
Oh yeah, I mean, that's a totally spectacular question, because I'm definitely a person that sometimes has to fight with like depression or being down, and you know, maybe sometimes I think it's because I care about things a lot, and I wish things were different in some ways. It could be for many reasons, you know, but one of the things that I realize is every day to not be regretful of the past. I mean, we can't change the decisions we've made in the past. We can't change what we've done in the past. So we have to live the best we can today, you know, and to try to live up to my expectation of myself every day, and to look forward, you know, learning from the past, but moving forward. And another thing that I think is really important to do uh, is to be grateful, you know, to be really in touch with gratitude, because you know, for everything that we don't have in our lives, or for everything that we wish we had, there's so many great things that are right in front of your face that you're quite often missing. You know, I mean, I think the fact that just waking up alive every day, it's an incredible gift, because you know, that means that there's a possibility for you to go do something amazing. You know, and and certainly, even though many of us don't have the life that we you know, our life might not be exactly what we want it to be every day, but there are people that are literally sitting in a hole somewhere rotting away. I mean, there are people that are starving. There are people that you know, in the end, it can always be worse, you know, and um so I try to be grateful for what I have every day, to remind myself, like, yeah, you know, sometimes things don't go exactly how I want them to go in a day, but that's cool. And finally, you know, closing out that thought, the idea of rolling with the punches. You know, I mean, especially when we were a young band, you know, being on tour and trying to figure things out, and it can be very frustrating when things don't go how you expect them to go. And what I've learned over the years is that things almost never go the way you want them to go.
Oh,
So that being the case, it's like, just make the best of where things are, and find a way to enjoy it. And as a result of that kind of thinking, I have learned to have more fun and to be happier, especially on tour where things are very rarely go according to plan. I really learned to enjoy myself, and that's an awesome gift. I'm like so glad that I finally figured that out, because I would, you know, if you stress all the small stuff, then you're going to be stressing all day long.
That's a great answer. And that would be a great way to end off the show. And right
Cool.
before that, though, I just wanted to say that we live in a pop and dance heavy world, but who are some punk rock bands that we should all be watching right now?
Well, I mean, I would point to, well, Refuse just got back together kind of like permanently, and they're making a new record. And I think as a band that has something to say, that makes incredible music, Refused is a band that I would really, really be keeping my eye on right now. Bands that I grew up on loving, were, one of the bands that really inspired me to want to have a band is The Clash. So if people have never listened to The Clash, I would encourage people to check out The Clash. And this in a couple of weeks we're going to be playing with Rancid,
Nice.
who are one of my favorite bands of all time. So there's 3 names for you.
What about one upcoming band, like a new emerging artist?
Well, they're not as upcoming, so to speak, but they are a band that little by little is kind of gaining traction, but a lot of people aren't aware of them, is the Menzingers. The Menzingers are one of my favorite bands right now, and they're a band that not everybody's particularly aware of. So that's a band that I would throw out there for people to check out.
Absolutely. We'll definitely check them out. Thank you so much, Justin, for joining us today.
Yeah, man, it's been a blast, Sean. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. What an awesome, fantastic, intelligent, talented, and creative human being. Please pre-order and download their new album, American Spring, via iTunes, which drops on May 26th. You can follow the band on Twitter at anti_flag and on Facebook at anti.flag.official. These are really awesome guys, and you better check them out. You can follow myself on Twitter at Sean Chin. You can follow the show at Live in Limbo and use the hashtag Capsule Podcast to join in on a conversation. Please subscribe to our show on iTunes. Give us 5 stars and leave some nice words in the comment section. And as always, you can find the show notes at liveinlimbo.com/capsule. Take care.